Yo, what's up, everyone? Hello, ladies and genitals. Sorry, stupid autocorrect. Gentlemen, it's your boy Treka live on Instagram. And today we're gonna be doing an interview with Kevork Almassian. He is the founder of Syriana Analysis. He's a Syrian political analyst, and he does a lot of videos, informative videos about Syria, about the situation in Syria, the war in Syria, the economic sanctions, and many other important issues, political issues. He's gonna be joining the live session now. I'm just gonna send him the around now. Just wait a little second. Yo,
Hello, Treka.
how are you, my friend?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kevork Almassian. He's the founder of Syriana Analysis. He's a political analyst. He does a lot of important videos, political videos about Syria and the Middle East, and also about the West. He has a page. You can follow him on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and of course on Pornhub. You can find all his latest videos there.
I also have an animal account if you want. Wait.
Yeah. Oh, look at the good, cute dog.
My cool
Amazing.
boy is here as well.
I love the dog. I love your dog.
Hello.
Hello. So cute. How are you, Kevork?
I'm good, bro. How are you doing? Thank you for
I'm
the
doing good,
introduction.
my brother. Thank you for doing the interview.
It's my pleasure, Habibi. Anytime.
Okay. Thank you, my friend. Well, first of all, let the people know more about you. Now, you're a Syrian from Aleppo. You're Christian, and you also have Armenian origins. You've lived in Syria all your life. You're a Syrian. But I want to ask, what was the main reason that made you leave Syria?
So first of all, my grandparents survived the Armenian genocide and they found refuge, shelter in Syria. So I was born and raised in Aleppo in the northern part of Syria. And I've had a very strong of belonging to Syria and also appreciation because the Syrians have helped my grandparents from the Ottoman massacres. So when you could keep this as a context or a background in your mind, you can also build upon it why I have also a certain political position when it comes to the Syrian war, because one of the major, let's say, players involved in the Syrian war and participated in the destruction of Syria is Turkey. And we know that Erdogan, he openly calls and says that he is a new Ottoman. And he wants to restore the Ottoman glory, and he even shows some maps carrying in his hands, trying to extend his empire to China, maybe to Xinjiang, you know, to all that the peaceful revolutionaries there as well.
Yeah.
It was like, especially my city Aleppo. It started in the mid-2012 when the so-called rebels, supported by NATO, Turkey, Israel, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, name it, they invaded the city with four-wheel trucks full of PKCs, anti-aircraft missiles, anti-tank missiles. So they were so peaceful. They just had some anti-tank missiles and cruisers. Stinger, sorry, from the United States. So you had to make a choice because we are not living in a la-la land, and we know what the government is. It is a secular government that preserves the multiculturalism in Syria, but we lacked some political freedoms in Syria. We understand that, but at the same time, when you see the people who get all the support from all the imperialist powers around the world and what they are calling for, which is underground, they want an Islamic caliphate. But when you watch the TV, it's just like all these beautiful LGBTQ, pro-LGBTQ activists are calling for human rights and democracy, right? It's a complete opposite of the narrative is completely the opposite. So it was around 13 to 15,000 civilians died during between 2012 and 2016 by the hell cannons and mortars and kidnappings of the civilians.
Yeah.
My brother was one of the victims. They kidnapped my brother when they couldn't kidnap me because I was also active politically back then. And this was a decisive moment also for me on an individual level. So I gave you the political background, but now it's a personal issue as well. So I was full-heartedly with the Syrian government and the Syrian army because I don't like to see my country go back 14 centuries back.
Yeah.
When the people can cut your hands and chop your dick if you do something wrong according to their interpretation of the of religion, right? So it's a very tricky position you take because some people will accuse you of being an anti-Islam, which is completely wrong. Because we have to know that Aleppo and Damascus are around 9 million Muslims and Sunni Muslims, and the vast majority of them stood with the government, and they paid also a huge price, including scholars from the Muslims. They paid the price for it. They were assassinated, their kids were kidnapped and murdered. So it was in 2015, half the city of Aleppo, where I come from, was occupied by Al-Qaeda. And this is not my subjective opinion. Even the Pentagon said in 2015 and 16 that it was occupied by Al-Nusra. And we all know Al-Nusra is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. It was a hell on earth. It's not livable. It's not for humans to live anymore. So I had to leave, and I came to Germany. And now, because of my political work on social media and on YouTube, for example, on YouTube, I have now around 7.6 million views since I started posting videos.
That's amazing.
Yeah, in early 2017. So when you start making some difference, you have to expect a backlash and people fighting against you, and especially in the mainstream media. So if you check me now on Google, you will think that I am a radical right-wing fascist neo-Nazi, Assad's right hand in Europe, Assad's right leg in Europe, or call it whatever. They call me spy for Assad and all these things. But truth of the matter is, I'm just a one-man person living in an apartment and posting videos with my dog on social media, and everybody knows it.
Well, you know, it's really crazy because like the people that you are against and the people that you were exposing on your YouTube and Facebook channel were ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all of these extremist Islamic jihadist terrorist groups that were bombing and killing minorities in Syria and also killing Muslims in Syria that didn't follow their extremist Wahhabi ideology. They did suicide bombs, beheading, they destroyed churches, they destroyed mosques, they destroyed public places. They started implementing Sharia law in areas that they took control. So when you are doing videos exposing these animals and telling the world why you are against them, how can they flip your own position and make you look like you're a far-right wing person or so on? Like, it just doesn't make sense because the majority of the Syrian people, especially the patriots, they're all against ISIS, they're all against Al-Qaeda and Jabhat al-Nusra, and all of these Islamic extremist terrorist groups that were funded by America and NATO and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, just like you mentioned. So it's really crazy how they can flip someone's position and destroy someone's reputation over him simply exposing the truth of what is going on in Syria. You know, a lot of people, when they listen to CNN and the mainstream media news and so on, like they have this idea that what was happening in Syria was a civil war and the Syrian government was just randomly killing anybody in the street that had a different opinion as theirs. But the truth is very clearly now, you know, like in 2011 and 12 and 13, when we were saying these kinds of stuff, people thought we were doing like conspiracy theories, but now it's a complete fact that they were funded by America, by Obama, they were funded by Saudi Arabia, by Turkey, and they were getting money, they were getting weapons, they were getting even like support by the media. The media was portraying them as freedom fighters and moderate rebels and people that just want to be hippies. But, you know, But the truth you know, the truth is completely different. And now, thankfully, a lot of people are waking up to the truth because now they are seeing things, you know, they can't lie anymore like they used to in the beginning of the war.
Yes.
But now everything, thankfully, is great, is now clear, I mean. Now, I want to ask you a question. Now, you that you're living in Germany and so on, I'm sure like you meet up with Syrian refugees there that live there and so on. Do you see the Syrian refugees in Germany right now? Do you see them interested in going back to their country, or do you feel like most of the Syrian refugees now in Europe have forgotten the idea of coming back to Syria?
Before answering your question, my German teacher from Stuttgart, you just wrote a comment telling me not to smoke in public. I don't know why.
I mean, I'm smoking too.
Yeah, does it go against the community standards of Instagram to smoke, or it's like we're just having some friendly chat, you know?
Bro, you can smoke, you can drink, you can do whatever you want. This is not a formal media news. This is
it's
like
not
a
weed,
comedian
it's not
stage.
marijuana, it's just like a normal e-cigarette or whatever. Anyways, to be honest, the Syrians in Germany are divided into different categories, and there are the people who are very much against the government. These are, in my opinion, my subjective opinion is around 70% of the people here, because they came all from Turkey and they were loyal to Erdogan. And they came in Germany. This is my observation. I could be wrong, but these people are not going to go back to Syria, especially the influencers. And when I say the influencers nowadays, these so-called influencers, it's also business for them. It's like they go on YouTube, they just want to generate money, so they every day they become more radical against Syria and against the Syrian government, because if Germany changes its position one day, which could come in the coming years, they have a work online that says if I go back, then Assad will personally come in the airport and murder me and la la la. You know all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So these people are not going to go back. Some people are more realistic, even though they are against the government. I mean, at the end of the day, Syria is their country. They hold the passport. They have family there, so they will go back but when they get this German citizenship. So they can go back, because if you're a refugee, you cannot go visit Syria unless you have the German citizenship. And now I think the people are applying after 6 years of stay in Germany.
Yeah.
And they are the pro-government Syrians. Those are, in my opinion, 20–30% of the Syrians. They are definitely going to go back to Syria to find if there are opportunities for resettlement and stuff. But in this economic situation, it is also not possible for them to go back and resettle, right? And the basic necessities are, Syria is in dire situation right now. So some people will definitely visit, some people will try to resettle. Let's see how things will develop. But speaking of the Syrian refugees, I will tell you, I mean, most of the Syrians in Germany are refugees, and there is nothing wrong about that. If you are running from a war, you can apply for asylum in a third safe country. But also there are people who cause the troubles in Syria, right? And we don't know the estimates. We don't know how many people among them caused troubles, how many of them carried arms. But there are definitely people who carried arms and
100%.
They are posing as refugees here. And if you don't find evidence that they were carrying arms and committed crimes, both, they won't be arrested. Like, if you know someone who is 100% sure that he was from, let's say, Nusra, but you don't have a proof, even if you have a proof that he was carrying arms and you don't have a proof that he committed some crime in Syria, then he will walk free.
Yeah, but the problem is, you know, like when there were many times when the Syrian army were liberating areas, and when these jihadist groups saw that their life is now in danger, and in a couple of days the whole area will be liberated, most of them, you know, shaved the pubic hair that was on their chin, and they traveled to Turkey, and they went to Europe and posed as refugees when they were fighting with Al-Qaeda and fighting with ISIS and all of these jihadist terrorist groups. So these people, they definitely are dangerous for the Western society, you know, posing as, you know, refugees when they were actually terrorists and jihadists.
But you know what's the problem, Treka? There are also a group of Europeans or Westerners, or call them whatever you want, especially on the left. And they are not left. I mean, they claim to be left-wing. If they are really left-wing, they won't be with Islamists. They won't be supporting these Islamists. But there are people, for example, from the Green Party, from the Social Democratic Party in Germany. Those are supposedly left-wing parties. They support the terrorists in Syria. Let's put things in the right direction. They directly support, yes, the Greens and the Social Democrats. They support the Islamists in Syria. And when they come here, they embrace them and they just treat them as if they are some cute refugees. They are not. My only problem is with the Islamists. And when I spoke about it and I said there are Islamists among the refugees and that we have to differentiate and filter, I've been accused of being a self-hating Syrian neo-Nazi fascist and all this stuff. And I said this in 2016, and I said, guys, if there are only 1% of the refugees are Islamists, this is already a big number. You have like 10,000 Islamists in Germany. And you know, 10,000 people can, they were able to occupy entire cities.
Five people are able to cause huge explosion and kill many people. And it happened a lot of times in Syria, where you would find one suicide bomber. He would go to a public place where the place is crowded, blow up himself up and kill 20 people. So when you're saying 1%, which, you know, means 10,000, that's a very, very dangerous number. And what is crazy about these Western people who aren't really educated about the matter here in Syria, the people that they are actually defending and portraying as heroes, like I said, these people are extremist jihadist terrorist groups. And if you, of course, now the Syrian government are not angels. They have their problems, they have corruption, they have many things that need to change. But if you want to look at Syria before the war started in 2011, Syria was one of the safest countries in the Middle East, which is something very rare because everyone knows like the Middle East is always fighting and killing and wars. Syria was one of the safest countries in the Middle East. When there was a war in Iraq,
in the world, safest. It's the seventh safest country in the world in 2010.
Yes, millions of Iraqis came to Syria when the war in Iraq started for safety. When the war in Lebanon in 2006 happened, many Lebanese came to Syria for safety. So like Syria has always been known as a very safe country, and it's filled with many religious groups. You know, you have the Muslim Sunnis, the Shias, the Christian Catholics, the Orthodox, the Druze, the Alawis, Jews. You have people from other ethnicities like the Kurds, like the Armenians, and they were all coexisting and living peacefully with each other. Then suddenly, when the West and Saudi Arabia started funding these terrorist groups and sending them money and weapons, they came to Syria and they started blowing things up, killing, burning churches, causing huge destruction and division in the country. But all of this stuff that we are mentioning, the Western media and politicians, they don't mention it. They just say, oh, there were freedom fighters and, you know, people, you know, that listen to the Beatles, they were asking for freedom in Syria, and then randomly the Syrian army just started killing them for no reason, which is a complete lie. A complete lie. And a lot of people need to be educated about this matter because it's a very, very major and important information for people to know.
To be honest, in 2021, if you don't know this information, then I think you're a burden on humanity, because after 10 years and 11 years of a war that costed over 500,000 deaths, and if you cannot yet double check the information you receive, I mean, we blame, of course, some Westerners for being so naive, but at the same time, we should also blame many Syrians who still believe that there is a revolution. Just yesterday, I left the gym and I went to shop to eat some chicken. And while I was eating, I realized two people were staring at me when I was at the restaurant. It happens to me on a daily basis.
Because you're too sexy?
Yeah, it's the beard. It's just the beard. The thing is, the German media made me so famous here by calling me like the Assad right hand. I'm a propaganda warrior for Assad, etc., etc. So many Syrians know me, and they were like staring at me all the time, and I don't give them any attention. And then when I was trying to leave the restaurant, they called me and in a disrespectful way, of course. I mean, they have no self-respect at all. And I turned back and I looked at them. I said, "What do you want?" And they said, "We want to talk to you." I said, "Okay, come talk to me." And after some discussion, I mean, they realized that all their stereotypes about me, for example, are false. And like, for example, they tell me, "So why do you call for the deportation of the refugees from Germany?" And I was like, "Who told you that I said something like this?" And they said, it's all in the media. And I was like, "Yeah, if you go to the media, you will also find articles that say the earth is flat. So do you also want to believe that, or you have a brain to double check? Why would I call for the deportation of the refugees from Germany? Just ask yourself that question at the first hand."
Yeah.
And when they realize that this is a discussion that they cannot cope with, they said, "Okay, but you support the tyrant, la la la." And I was like, "Yeah, if you consider me supporting a tyrant, then you're supporting terrorists in Syria." And one of them clearly said, and he said, "Yes, I'm with terrorism till Assad is gone. When he's gone, then after that we will manage terrorism." These guys are so simple-headed and simple-brained people that, or they know what's happening and they are just, I mean, trying to pretend they're simple. But yeah, he's living in Germany and he says, "I'm with terrorism." And if you tell the police now, he will go to an investigation. He will say, "I was being ironic." Like one of the people I found him on social media, he posted my gym address where I go, and he's asking the people to strangle over my neck. And you know, in Arabic, what does that mean? Tamadas, when we say it's like kill him, right?
Yeah.
And when he was investigated, he said, "No, I was just being ironic. It's not meant like that." And he's just
I wasn't being literal, you know. Why did they think
he's not being literal. It's just it's fun, you know. It's just making some fun jokes on social media, asking people to kill me. And then, so yeah, even the laws here are very, I don't know, loosey. And if you don't have evidence with a video while he's trying to stab you and his knife already killed you, you know, and then you can't even defend yourself.
I mean, it's crazy. It's really crazy. I mean, it's really, really crazy how, like, in 10 years, how the whole world just, not even in 10 years, from the first year of the war, like when the war started in Syria, how everything completely changed. Like, how can Syria turn from one of the safest and cheapest countries in the Middle East to one of the most dangerous countries in the whole world? I mean, it's very sad and depressing to know, especially when you know how Syria was before the crisis, before the war started. So it's very, very depressing. And there is a problem right now in Syria. Like when you talk about the first 5 or 6 years when the refugee crisis started, most of the people in Syria, when they were leaving Syria, they were leaving Syria because of security problems. Their life was constantly in danger because of what ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all of these jihadists were doing. But right now, we still have Syrians leaving Syria. And the main problem, the main reason why they are leaving isn't because of the safety issue as much as it is because of the economic sanctions and the economic situation in Syria. The situation in Syria has become very, very bad economically after, you know, the West started implementing economic sanctions. People started working 2 to 3 jobs a month, and it's not even enough. And most of the Syrians, educated people like doctors, engineers, physicians, businessmen, they're not able to make enough money to survive because of the economic sanctions that have been implemented by the West. So a lot of people, even till today, are still trying to find a way out of Syria. People living in Damascus, for an example, Damascus is a city that has no terrorism anymore. You know, even Damascus countryside was completely liberated back in 2018. So you have people from Damascus and other liberated areas that are struggling to find a way out of Syria because, you know, people have responsibilities, people have a family to feed, have children, have a career to build and a future to build. And they find that in Syria, unfortunately, after the economic sanctions have been implemented, life has become very, very difficult, that it's almost impossible to build your future there, that you have to find a way out of Syria to another country, you know, to be able to provide to your family. And this is a very, very sad and important issue that's happening right now in Syria.
Treka, I think till 2018 it was a military war, and then it turned into an economic war. And now if we see the situation on the ground, it's pretty obvious that the Americans and the Israelis, they have very clear vision of how they want to see Syria now and how they want to see Syria in 5 years. They want to keep Syria in its place, the way it is now. And there is no plan for reconstruction, and there is no willingness for reconstruction. And look what the Americans do, for example. They occupy a ton of border crossing because they want to control the imports from Iraq and from Jordan into Syria, right? In eastern side of Syria. And then they occupy the entire area through the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces. And there they control the borders with Iraq. And then you have Turkey is entirely occupying the northern borders with Syria. You have only an access to Lebanon now and Jordan. And even that, the US is still, for example, they are attacking from time to time. There is a border crossing in Al-Bukamal near the borders with Iraq because they don't want to see Iraqis and Iranians sending any sort of aid or good or basic necessities. And now we have Israel bombing the Latakia port, which is, you're trying to import also your basic needs. I mean, the last 2 attacks on the Latakia port, there weren't any military targets there. It has no military significance. It's Israel telling Syria and Iran that first, Syria is not allowed to recover, and 2, Iran is not allowed to invest in the Latakia port. And when we say investment in the Latakia port, we're not talking about a military port. It's a civil port. And Iranians there want to develop the services in the Latakia port because they have a big experience in that. Similarly, China invests in some Somalia, Eritrea, Djibouti ports, in Israel ports. So these things happen in any normal world. But in the Israeli world, it's a different vision. It's like they want to control who invests in their neighboring country. And this last bombing group.
Just to tell you, like last week when Israel struck the Latakia port, I spoke about it on my Facebook and YouTube channel. And I posted the video of the huge explosion that happened in the port and showing like the huge damage and destruction that the strikes, caused. And when I posted about it, because I have many followers from the West, so most of them were confused that they didn't hear any news about it on their mainstream media. So I posted the video of the huge explosion and the strikes and like showing proof of what happened last week. And the majority of my followers that are living in Europe and in the West, they had zero idea that this was going on in Syria. They were telling me, Treka, if you didn't post about this event happening, we would have never knew that Israel struck Latakia a couple of days ago.
Yeah. Now imagine if Syria, I'm not saying bombed the Haifa port, if Syria sent a pigeon to Israel, the UN Security Council would have an emergency meeting, and they will condemn Syria for sending a pigeon to Israel, and they will call it anti-Semitism, right?
Yeah, they'll be like, that pigeon was a Nazi. I saw his mustache; it resembled Hitler's mustache. So we have to destroy Syria completely.
They will find something. They will catch the bird and draw some mustache.
But do you know what is very, very like sad with how they manipulate the news and how they manipulate the truth? Is that, for an example, Israel would, for an example, strike Syria. If let's say they wouldn't report anything about it, if let's say Syria retaliates and strikes Israel back, they would only talk about, oh my God, Israel is being attacked by Syria for no reason. Like we should send America and NATO countries to destroy Syria because it's attacking like Israel for no reason. So the way they manipulate the truth and they don't show the people the full picture is just very sad and annoying at the same time, I want to ask you a question. What was the main reason, in your opinion, for the strike on the Latakia port?
There were actually two reasons. One, of course, this is Israeli narrative, right? I mean, they claim that through their media, I mean, they don't officially even recognize that they're bombing Syria. But they say they're sending two messages. One is to the countries who are restoring diplomatic ties with Syria, in especially the Arabic countries who want to open up again to Syria and do trade and just normal relations. That, okay, if you want to open ties or restore ties with Syria, that's fine. But remember, Syria is still unstable. You cannot invest there. You cannot reconstruct this country. And this country is in a state of instability. This is number one. So they are destabilizing Syria further to stop or block the reconstruction or any projects of investments that the Arabic countries are planning to do in Syria, right? Especially the Emirates now. The second is the message is sent to Iran. You know, Tartus port is invested by now Russia. And the Latakia port, Iranians wanted to develop the port. And this message is sent to Iran. You're not allowed to invest. So the Israelis do not have a problem with the Russians. Let's be honest about it. They have a problem with, with the Iranians. And the way these attacks are happening, it indicates that the Russians are not interested in helping Syria repel these attacks decisively. So they are, of course, giving military help and hardware, but they are very limited. And even this hardware do not pose a significant danger to the attacks of Israel. We're not talking about offensive weapons here. We're just talking about defensive weaponry. Like, for example, when the attack happened, the Russians made a statement. A Russian military officer from Al-Hamamim air base, he said, the Syrians didn't engage with the Israeli missiles in this last attack because there was a Russian cargo plane was landing in Al-Hamamim air base. First of all, Al-Hamamim air base is 30 kilometers away from Lattakia port. They're not near each other. Two, if you say this to the media, you are telling that your ally Syria has a very old, unsophisticated air defense systems that they cannot differentiate between a friend and a foe. And if that is true, then why? If Syria is your ally, then why Syria doesn't have more sophisticated weaponry, which Syria asked for, and they want to pay the price for it, right? But this is not true, because Syria has Panzer S1 and has S300. And these two weapons, they can, when you choose your target, it locks on your object. It doesn't miss, like it doesn't go and find another object. It just goes behind this target. So that's completely untrue what they're claiming here. And so the question here is, have the Russians blocked Syria from retaliating? Did they ask them what happened? We don't know. We don't know, but it is very strange that Israel bombed 4 missiles, strike with 4 missiles, and all of them reached their destination. And we know that usually Israel shoots like 10 to 12 missiles, and around 80 to 90 of them are already intercepted or bombed in the air, destroyed in the air. So why this time it didn't happen? So have the Russians also sending message to the Iranians that we don't want you in the Latakia port? I don't know. I'm just asking questions here. But I'm as a Syrian, I'm not satisfied with the role of Russia now, especially, like, look, Russians had a very decisive role in keeping Syria as a state in 2015. Were it not for the Russians, it was very difficult for Syria to continue the fight against all these terrorists, right? Even the Iranians and the Hezbollah, they intervened, they couldn't alone, single-handedly fight against the terrorists. So we are not denying that at all. Russia had a very good role in the beginning, in the first 3 years. But after 2018 and 2019, you have to, what's the role of Russia? If they're blocking the Syrian advancement in Idlib, and blocking and appeasing Erdogan in the north, which is occupying the north now, and appeasing the Americans in the east, who are occupying half of Syria's gas and oil resources and the wheat of Syria. So, like, they're losing their credibility in Syria. They're losing their support. And when I say this in public, especially on Twitter, because I know a lot of Russian diplomats and even ambassadors follow my page, and they have to understand, because maybe they don't speak Arabic, or they don't follow what's happening on social media accounts of the Syrian accounts, right? A lot of influential Syrians are criticizing Russia, and the mood is shifting. So any military, foreign military presence in any country, it is conditioned. First, it's the legitimate government calls for these forces to come and help. But two, which is a sub-condition, it is the approval of the people. The people who welcome you as a foreign army to come and help you to achieve your interests. So they don't see you as an invader. Syrians will not perceive, in my opinion, the Russians as an invader anytime soon, but the negative sentiments are growing against the Russians, and they have to be careful. If they lose the popular support in Syria, then their presence in Syria will be unwelcome, because the government, even if they say, okay, you can stay for 50 years or 100 years or whatever, but the soldiers themselves on the ground, when you walk to buy something or meet some friends, you will not feel welcomed. So what I'm trying to say here, the Russians should be careful of this. And I'm not asking them to be on the Syrian side against Israel. I'm just saying they have to be in the middle, at least in the middle, and at least to give Syria the means to defend itself, right? And this is all defensive measures what I'm asking for. And I hope the Russians understand this, because they will pay the price if they ignore the general mood in Syria that is shifting against them. They will pay the price, and I don't want them to pay the price, because Russia, for me, and the allies in general, they mean a lot. You know, for me, it's like how the Arabs helped my grandparents when they survived the Armenian genocide, and I feel so much appreciation, and I feel there's a depth on my neck. It's the same for the Russians and the other allies who helped Syria, right? Were it not for them and for the Syrian army, we were all either being slaves now, second-class citizens, or being slaughtered. So, of course, we appreciate that. So, in order to keep this friendship and alliance, there should be some also measures being taken by Russia and Syria that serve the interests of Syria.
I want to ask you, because a couple of minutes ago you mentioned Idlib, and I want to talk to you about Idlib. But before I get into Idlib, we just want to say one last thing about the port in Latakia that got destroyed. What were the things in the Latakian port that got destroyed by Israel? Like, what were the containers that Israel destroyed that were in the port?
You may not believe me, but there were many Nescafés, milk for the children, and conservatoire, like this processed food and stuff. That was what Israel bombed.
Yeah, that's what was destroyed. Like you had rice, you had wheat, you had medicine, you had
nothing close to any military
anything that has to do with military equipments. It was all food and things that they were going to use to provide to the Syrian people, especially like the people that are poor and living in a very, very bad situation. In this port, they were importing like all of these goods and foods and medicine for them to give to the Syrian people. And unfortunately, more than 85% of it got completely destroyed, which is very, very terrible and depressing, for the Syrian people, because this would have helped millions and millions of Syrian people, survive in this cold winter.
That's why what I'm saying, this is not a military message. This is an economic message by Israel and by the US. If they want to send a military message, they usually bomb the military research centers. They bomb some air defense systems or some weapon cargo, for example, coming from Damascus, Mazeport, etc. But this had nothing to do with any military thing.
Yeah. I want to go now to Idlib, because as we all know, Idlib is the last main major city that is still under the control of these hairy baboons, the extremist Islamic terrorist groups. What I find really, really strange, my friend, is that I remember the majority of Syria got liberated in 2018, the ending of 2018. Remember when we liberated Damascus countryside and all the cities, and all that was left is the city of Idlib. And this, we're talking about 2018. Today we are in 2022. Now, for the past years, the Syrian army has surrounded the city of Idlib, but till today they haven't, I personally see that till today they haven't really taken any significant approach to really liberating the city of Idlib. So I want to ask you, as a political analyst and a very hairy person like me, why do you think Idlib has been taking so long for the Syrian army to liberate it?
If I want to rely on my hair powers and beard powers, I would say there are many reasons why the Syrian army is not advancing in Idlib since 1.5 to 2 years now. Number one is the city is occupied by not only by al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda, but also there are over 20,000 multinational jihadists there. And these multinational jihadists, for example, you have at least 5,000 of them of the Uyghurs from Turkestan, the Xinjiang in this northern region in China.
Yeah.
So if you want to fight against them, it will be first difficult to fight against them, and two, where are you going to send these people? Idlib is an international issue. It's not only a Syrian issue. Like there are Shvedis, British, Saudis, Uzbekis, Kazakhs, Chechens, like name it. Maybe 100 nationalities living there. So
even the Turkish military is there, right?
Yeah, the Turkish military is protecting them. Let's be honest.
That's one of the huge reasons why it's also taking a long time for us to be able to liberate it, because they're under the protection, all of these jihadists, they're under the protection of the Turkish military and also the United States military. They're being protected by the United States and by Turkey, and that's one of the main reasons why the Syrian army is not being able to liberate the city, because you're talking about 20,000 jihadist groups. They're all equipped with high-level American weapons. They are being funded with money, weapons, logistical. It's like they are very, very, very strong.
Look,
it's also very, very confusing to me that it's since 2018. You're talking almost 4 years. There is no any significant approach that I personally have seen the Syrian army do to really liberate it. Okay, yes, we have surrounded this city. They're not able to go out of it. But I mean, what's stopping them from entering?
So let's remember when the Syrian army started liberating northern Hama, northern parts of Hama, which is in the southern Idlib, right? So in order to liberate the M4 highway that connects Aleppo to Damascus, which passes through Idlib or passes through Hama and all the way to Homs and Damascus, the Turks directly intervened. And they started to bomb through their Bayraktar drones, the Syrian army positions, our Panzer S-1 systems. Over 200 Syrian soldiers died within a few weeks.
Yeah.
That's a huge number of soldiers died. And the Russians, back then, they intervened also directly on the side of the Syrian army because it was a decisive war, and both of the Syrians and the Russians were determined to liberate the M4 highway just to keep the country alive so you can connect the major cities together. Now, the M5 highway, which connects Aleppo to Idlib and from Idlib to Latakia, it is very important and very significant highway. So they want to liberate it. But the Russians, now they say, okay, we want to solve this in a diplomatic way. We want to talk to Turkey. We want to force them to create a 10-kilometer buffer zone on both sides of the highway. But the Turkey, since 3 years, hasn't implemented one thing from this agreement. And because there is a conflict of interest between now Syria and Russia, Russia wants to keep Turkey on, it's not on its side, but at least in the middle. You know, Turkey has problems now with the United States, and Russia wants to use these problems in its favor. So they don't want to anger Turkey in order for Turkey to go back on in the basket of the Americans, right? Completely.
Yeah.
So as long as Erdogan is in the middle now, Russians are happy. At least he's not 200% pro-America. He's also doing some business and giving leverage to the Russians. So it's a conflict of interest. When believe me, if Russia and Turkey now have a conflict, diplomatic conflict, a big one or a military one, you will see Idlib liberated within at least like around 3 months. Give it 3 months, it will be liberated.
Well, if Putin is watching right now, I heard that Erdogan is sleeping with his wife. So I'm just throwing that out there in case they want to start the conflict today. That would be a good idea. That's what I heard. He told her, today's Thanksgiving, would you like to eat some turkey? And she said yes. And I'm not going to go into more disturbing details. So Putin, if you're watching, Erdogan has been doing some nasty stuff with your wife. So if you are interested in doing the conflict today, I think it's the right time because, I mean, it's your wife. Come on.
Yeah.
And
Turkey, I just want to mention one thing. I just want to mention one thing very fast here. The occupation of Turkey in the north is more dangerous than the occupation of Israel in the south. And I'm not saying that the Israelis aren't dangerous. Of course they are. But the existential threat that Turkey poses on Syria is bigger than of Israel. It's first, the military size is maybe 10 times more.
Yeah.
The manpower is maybe 100 times more. And do not forget that there are, I would say, hundreds of thousands of Syrians who are very pro-Erdogan and consider themselves Ottomans, they consider themselves Turks. So you have assets also in Syria who are Syrians who hold the Syrian nationality, but they feel like belonging to Turkey and belonging.
But that is bullshit. You are a Syrian, you should be proud of your country and defend your country against illegal occupiers, because the fact is this: Turkey is illegally in Syria. America is illegally in Syria. All of these countries, they're illegally. We might have our, disagreements with Russia, but at the end of the day, Russia was officially invited by the Syrian government to come to Syria and help in the fight against terrorism and ISIS and Al-Qaeda. But on the other hand, Turkey is illegally in Syria. And so Turkey has been proven with facts that they have been funding Al-Qaeda, funding ISIS and all of these jihadist groups, and they are protecting them. So fuck Turkey. Not the country, but the government and the president.
Treka, it's even worse than that. Turkey has a vision in Syria in occupying the northern part and Idlib, and they want to organize a referendum in the coming years. After they Turkify the area, they are building schools, hospitals, universities. They're teaching Turkish. They are dealing with Turkish lira. They are teaching the Turkish language. Like, imagine you were born now in the northern Syria, and then after 10 years of learning Turkish and Turkish curriculum and using Turkish lira, would you feel you are a Syrian or a Turk?
But that's in other words, they want to conquer Syrian land and make it part of their own land. They already stole our own land.
Yeah. This is the same. It's the same strategy. It's exactly the same strategy. They are Turkifying the area in order to conquer it later. But the funny thing here is, those people who in Syria, the Syrian who hold the Syrian nationality, and they say they are pro-Turkey and pro-Erdogan, if their grandparents were alive, they would spit on their faces. Because the Ottomans occupied Syria for 400 years and fucked the entire country for 400 years and kicked it backwards.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how can you stand with an occupier? How can you stand with a country that has destroyed your own country and killed your own people and caused millions of refugees and economic sanctions and people's life in danger? How can any patriotic Syrian stand with a country like that? He's obviously not patriotic. And
not patriotic. The guy that I met yesterday, these two guys that I met yesterday, one of them is from the suburbs of Damascus and the other one is from the Golan Heights. Look at the irony. And both of them are anti-Assad, which I don't care. I mean, you can be
I mean, I don't care
anti-Assad.
too.
Yeah,
You
but
can be anti-Assad. You can be anti-Assad. As a Syrian, you have the complete right to have your own political opinions and to have your opinions in general. But when you start standing with a country that is destroying your own country, it's not like Turkey is destroying Assad's house, or Turkey is killing Assad's relative. No, they're killing the Syrian people. They're destroying the Syrian land. They're destroying the Syria's economy. They're occupying
Treka, they
Syria's
don't
land.
feel anymore they are Syrians. That's the problem. For example, this is not something that happened just once or twice. It's a pattern now. When I talk to some of my ex-friends or colleagues who are like very much anti-Assad, vast majority of them, they say, we don't feel anymore we're Syrians. We will, in Arabic, they say, أنا غسلت إيدي من سوريا. I
washed
know
my
more,
hands.
I no more care about Syria. They're just adding more misery on the Syrians. They're so selfish. Like they're in Europe, Canada, Australia, America now. Like you're having now all the social benefits here. A lot of you do not work. You have the money of the taxpayers. It's fine. Okay, you're getting it. But what you're doing is you're all the time participating in the protests again to calling for more sanctions on the Syrians while you're living here 24/24 electricity and heating and internet and everything, while you're just strangling the Syrian people inside. This is so selfish and criminal on so many levels. Like I go to demos here against the sanctions. I mean, all the time, they also go for demos, but when they go to demos, we do not go against them and like a counter demo, right? But every time we go for a demo calling in front of the American embassy calling for end the sanctions on Syria, they always come with maybe 100, 200 people with their flags, and they call for more sanctions. I mean, what kind of a person wants more sanctions on? Like they say, oh, this is against the regime. Okay, if the so-called regime, between quotation, is the one providing food, medicine, or is the one who has to buy this stuff, right, to provide it to the people. So if you sanction the government and ban it from importing, the people will not get the food. Do you think the people who rule Syria are now in need of medicine or of fuel or electricity? They all have it. I mean, it's the people suffering.
It's the people that need it. That's what I always say in my videos. It's like when they say, oh no, we're not, when the Western countries like the United States and European countries and so on, when they talk about the economic sanctions that they are implementing on Syria, they always say, oh no, we're not implementing economic sanctions on the Syrian people. We're implementing it on the Syrian government, which is a complete lie, because the people that are directly getting affected by these economic sanctions are the Syrian people. It's the Syrian people that are having a fuel crisis. It's the Syrian people that are having a bread crisis. It's the Syrian people that are staying more than 15 hours every single day without electricity, without water, without able to make money online, without able to import or export medicines that a lot of people are needing it in the hospitals. But because of the economic sanctions, Syria is not being able to import all of these important medicines that the sick people in the hospital need to get cured. So
Treka, now as a Syrian, try to open a bank account, you will be blocked. You can't open a bank account because you're Syrian. You can't send the money to someone and write, thank you, for example, for everything you do for Syria on PayPal. It's blocked. You can't send money to Syria through PayPal. If you try to do business with Syria, even if you're Syrian or non-Syrian, you try to open a project in Syria, America will come and sanction you. You cannot make business with Syria. So how can this be against the regime?
You can't even do a GoFundMe account to help, for an example, the orphans. If you do a GoFundMe account saying help the orphans in Syria, as soon as they see the word Syria, they will immediately block the account.
Yeah, that's
which is terrible, you know. So explain to me how these idiots, hemorrhoids, are saying that these economic sanctions are only put in place to punish the Syrian government. They are actually punishing the Syrian people. And that goes back to my point earlier when I said most of the Syrians today that are leaving Syria are not leaving Syria anymore because of security issues. More They are leaving because of economic issues, because a lot of people have a life, they have a family, they have children to feed, they have a future to build. And in Syria, it is unfortunately almost impossible to be able to make money and live a simple life anymore. Everyone is struggling. Everyone is struggling. And it is very sad and very depressing. And what annoys me more is that these politicians, whether we're talking about America or Canada or Germany or UK or Saudi Barbaria or Qatar or Turkey, it's like these politicians, they're all heartless. They're all heartless. Like they don't have humanity in their heart because they know 100% all the kind of suffering that they're causing for the Syrian people, and they don't care at all. And they're not doing anything to stop the suffering of the Syrian people. In fact, they're even adding more suffering for the Syrian people with their policies and their actions.
Treka, there are three types of people here. The politicians who are taking the decisions, they know 100% the repercussions and the consequences of the sanctions. They know. And they're criminal, they know it, and they will get away with it. Why would they care? If Tony Blair and George Bush, who killed millions of people in the Middle East, they're receiving now medals and honors and etc. Why would they care if they kill? When Madeleine Albright was asked about 500,000 children died in Iraq because of the American sanctions, she said the price was worth it. So what happened to Madeleine Albright? She's walking free, she's protected, nobody can touch her. So why would they care?
And it's all, and just to, of course you know this, but for the people watching that don't know this, and all of this destruction that happened in Iraq was started by a lie. When they said that Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction, they entered Iraq, they destroyed the country, they killed millions, caused millions of refugees to run away from Iraq. And after the whole country was destroyed and their president got killed, when the people started asking the American government, okay, what about the weapons of mass destruction that our soldiers went to Iraq and thousands of them died because of this statement? Where is the weapons of mass destruction? The American government was like, oh, sorry, it turned out that they don't have, we made a mistake. Yeah. It's like after what you did a mistake, Iraq till today is still paying the price because of that war.
Do you think they made a mistake? Do you think they made a mistake?
No,
they intentionally invaded Iraq knowing that they don't have weapons of mass destruction, but they sold the war as a just for the people because they said Saddam Hussein is 3 minutes away from nuking and bombing with chemical weapons the American bases in the Gulf, or etc., etc. And now it's the same thing with Syria with the chemical weapon narrative, right?
Yeah.
They will always find now the pandemic. I mean, you can see how can they lie with a straight face. I mean, there is no doubt that there is a virus that can kill people. Okay, we are not ignoring that at all. But we cannot hide the elephant, the big elephant in the room, where these governments are imposing draconian, authoritative measures on the people, and they're telling them just for your own safety. And it's so ridiculous and hilarious to see a lot of people think that this entire technological infrastructure that has been built after the pandemic or even before the pandemic, and now they're implementing on the people are so naive to think this infrastructure will just go away when the pandemic is over. No, Habibi. These measures are permanent. The same way.
And every 3 months they keep coming, okay, take the vaccine once, then okay, you have to take it twice. Then after 3 months, you have to take the booster shots. Then take another booster shot, why not? And you know what, why don't you stop drinking the vaccine or take this pill that
now they made it a compulsory in the EU to take a vaccine every 9 months. And there are countries who will make it every 6 months. But in my opinion, look, at the beginning I was warning and I was telling the people, look, this is not going to end when you take your vaccine. If you want to take the vaccine, go for it. I mean, it's your right at the end to protect yourself if you feel like vulnerable, right? But give the people the choice. But when you impose these mandates and you demonize the people who do not take. Now, look at the statistics today in Germany. I just posted it today on Twitter. Like, it's so hilarious that they say the unvaccinated are causing all this pandemic, okay? Now, the Omicron variant is the dominant variant in a lot of places. And in Germany, 42% of the people who got Omicron, they are fully vaccinated, which means they got 2 jabs. And 17% are fully vaccinated and received booster. And 3% of them are unvaccinated. So you have almost 59% of the cases in Germany of Omicron are either fully vaccinated or vaccinated and the booster.
Yeah.
So let's talk facts. These vaccines reduce severe illness. Okay, that's it. But do not say it stops the transmission. So if it doesn't stop the transmission, what is the point of the vaccine passports?
Exactly.
What's the point?
Exactly.
Why do people not ask this question? What's the point of, so you're okay with getting COVID from a vaccinated person if he goes to the gym or goes to the bar or a restaurant, but you're not okay of getting the COVID from an unvaccinated person? Because for me, if you're unvaccinated and you got COVID, you will be more ill, okay? And you will know you have the symptoms. You will be very ill. Sometimes you may stay in bed for 1 week. So you will know you're ill. But if you're vaccinated and you have very mild symptoms, maybe you don't know you have a COVID and you go out and you spread it. And especially with the Omicron variant, which is very contagious now, like if there is someone in the building now that has Omicron and he or she walks in the stairs, I may get the virus if I walk in this building. So it's very contagious. So it goes against your logic, right? So all this infrastructure that they have built on the people after making them afraid, you know, this fear mongering that they injected in the people's hearts and minds, they just make them surrender to the government and give away their freedoms. Now, we're living in Berlin, and since March 2020, we don't have a normal life anymore. Like, imagine, Treka, in Syria, imagine you're going to a restaurant and people are asking for your ID. It's like, even in a war zone, now, if I go to drink a coffee, you have to show your vaccine passport, and then you have to show your ID. Your ID is your personal private information. There is even your address on it. You shouldn't show your ID to anyone. This is yours. You can only show it to a governmental office when you're doing some application or doing some papers. So it became normal now. People are just walking around. If you show your vaccine status and you don't have an ID with you, there's no access. You don't have an access. And the numbers, I just want to mention this last thing, Treka.
Of course.
In the past week, okay, I will ample Corona Berlin. It's so hilarious, the numbers, that it becomes so ridiculous that the official numbers okay. So in the past 10 days in Berlin, less than 3 people been hospitalized of 100,000 people due to Corona, okay? And the beds that we have, we call it the ICU, which is the intensive care beds in Berlin. 18% of them are occupied between Corona and not Corona. And despite that, which is the numbers are so low now for hospitalization and the beds are available, we have a lockdown.
Yeah.
The big gatherings are canceled, the festivals are canceled, the clubs are canceled, fireworks during the New Year Eve are canceled.
What if the firework had COVID, so you can't really turn it on?
So imagine during the summer, I was traveling to Hamburg from Berlin. The temperature was 34 degrees. And 34 in a place like Berlin, it's too hot, believe me. It's not like in Syria.
Yeah, Celsius, we're talking Celsius.
And in the train, when I got in the train, the I don't know, the reception something, he talked to us and he said, we're not going to turn on the AC in the van, in the train, because it may circulate Corona.
Oh, wow. Well, see, very smart people, yeah.
for 2.5 hours, and they told us to buy water if we feel so warm or so thirsty. This, like, nobody is asking questions. Like, you go to a restaurant and you have to wear a mask while you're walking in. But when you sit, you can take off your mask.
Yeah,
How
because
many?
COVID is only in the entrance. It only stands in the entrance. But as soon as you enter, COVID can't walk. It's lazy.
So
So just wear a mask before you enter. But as soon as you're inside, then you can remove the mask because COVID only stands in the entrance.
Okay, I will give you a sillier example. Only 2 weeks ago, they closed the clubs. Before that, they said clubs are open. You can go to club.
But
like
no dirty dancing.
But no dancing. What do you do if you go to club? Constructive talk about geopolitics, or what do you do if you go to club? So it goes against your logic, right? Why the people aren't asking questions? I don't know.
Bro, it became like a dictatorship. And look, I'm gonna tell you something. Like I personally feel that with the vaccine thing, it should definitely be optional. It should be available for everyone. They should tell them, okay, you want to take the vaccine? Okay, Pfizer is available, AstraZeneca is available, Johnson, everything is available, but they should not make it mandatory because now there are some countries that are actually firing their employees if they are not vaccinated. So there are some companies and in countries, they came out with laws that says if you're not fully vaccinated, then you're going to get fired from your job. You're not going to be able to make money anymore. You're not going to be able to provide for your family unless you follow our rules. And to me, that has turned into dictatorship. It's not a matter of concern anymore. We're all grown-ups. We should all be able to make our own decisions. And if you want to take it, it should be completely available for anyone who wants to take it. But if you don't want to take it and you feel that you are healthy and with some exercise, drinking enough water and eating healthy, your immune system can be strong enough to protect you from COVID, then the government should completely allow you for your freedom. If you don't want to take it, it shouldn't be mandatory. It shouldn't be by force. You shouldn't lose your job because of your decision, because this is your own health and should be your own responsibility.
Especially
That's what I personally believe.
Especially the medical staff, they're kicking out the medical staff if you don't take the vaccine.
Yeah.
Now I will give you one example. Football players.
Yeah.
How many football player got COVID and he needed to be hospitalized?
Very few.
Zero. You don't see it. There is none. You don't need, why? You have to ask yourself, because these people have a strong immune system based on their lifestyle. So we have now 2 years.
Get enough sunlight.
It's been 2 years. It's been 2 years to the pandemic. Why the governments aren't pushing forward for like recommendations to make the people more active, go to sports, have a healthy diet, etc., etc. And how many people from these sport players who had heart issues after getting the vaccine? There are tens of them. Some of them, their entire career is over now. So, and of course, every vaccine has a side effect. It's normal, okay? But you cannot force someone to get some medicine that doesn't want it, right?
Yeah, it shouldn't be by force, and I totally agree with you. It should be optional for everyone and not by force and not mandatory. And no one should lose any of his work or privileges because of that. Because now it's, especially when you look at Australia and Canada, it has turned into a dictatorship. Like it's complete bullshit what is happening over there. Complete bullshit. Yeah, I even saw the video that you posted. I think it was yesterday of I think it was a German police officer with a police dog, and
that's in the Netherlands. That's in the Netherlands.
And the dog
protecting the people from COVID.
Yeah, the dog was tearing that guy's hand, and you wrote, "Oh, look, the Netherlands police protecting people from COVID." It's actually ridiculous. It's ridiculous what is happening in the world right now.
Yeah, it will happen the same if the people go and protest in Germany, but Germans are different.
Yeah.
French and the Dutch people in Holland are different. They go to protesting. In Italian, they go protesting. Here it's like,
damn.
Anything the government says, the majority of them just like obey. So
sheeps, in other words.
Unfortunately, they have a trust in like a woman that I know for some time. And when when I started to realize there is something fishy going on, after 3 months of the pandemic, I started writing about the inconsistencies of the government statements and the media. And I mean, she's so naive. She just asked me, why do you think the government and the media would lie? What's their
Why? They've
interest?
never done this before, Kevork. Why would you doubt it? Like, they've never done it.
And I was like, where were you, lady, in the past few decades?
I
I
swear.
mean, are you in hibernation mode? Are
I
you
don't
detached from the
know.
reality?
It's crazy, man. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
Well, Kevork, it was lovely talking to you. Very informative, very fun, and I hope the people watching learned something very valuable, especially when we're talking about this Syria and Syria's war and all of these important issues. Thank you so much for being part of this live video. And guys, if you want to see more of Kevork's work, you can follow him on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Twitter, all under the name Syriana Analysis and
Yes.
Kevork Almassian.
Yes. If you go to my account now on Instagram, I put my website, SyrianaAnalysis.com. You can find all my work there.
Yes.
And I really appreciate and I'm being thankful that you invited me, Treka. I will
Thank
also host you again soon, inshallah, on my Syriana Analysis. Let's have another chat like this. And guys, be supportive to people like Treka and independent commentators. And he's also presenting information with his humor. It's very important nowadays to deliver strong messages in a sarcastic way. I mean, my message is to you, don't be passive, be active. And even if you are not interested in politics, politics is interested in you. So it affects all of us. I'm not telling you to take radical positions and don't be radical at all. Be informed, learn about the issue, inform yourself, and have your strong arguments and engage and try to change your society, try to change your family. If they are already open-minded, then that's fine. If not, then be a positive asset. That's it.
Well said, my friend. Thank you so much, Kevork, and we
Thank
will
you, bro.
definitely stay in touch, my brother. Stay safe, and when you see Merkel, just give her a kiss for me.
Inshallah.
All right, bro.
Bye, bro. Bye.
Bye-bye.